welcome you, ladies and gentlemen, to Nightline. You know, there's always something fresh in the air when Nightline is on television, and we really appreciate that. And I would like to just get immediately into a scripture, because this is so important the day that we live in. Ephesians 6:12 says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." Well, you can't say it any better than that. That's our battle, you know. And again, we want to thank you for tuning in to Nightline. Programs have been great, been anointed, as we said before, and the Lord's really touching people. But I got to tell you this. I've got I got my great friend here, I'm telling you right now, and I hardly ever, I'm in and out of their offices over there, but boy, have I seen some growth in this young guy. And yeah, you might say, well, young, yeah, he's young. That's exactly right. When you're 71, everybody's young when you look back and see it. You understand what I'm saying? And but Tyler Harris, thank you so much, man, for coming in and being a part of our program and all. And you look, I'm not going to waste any time. Even if I've got a minute or two more, I don't need any time. I really want to get into to you and what good things the Lord has done. Give me a little bit of a background for the people who are viewing about your life maybe before you came to know the Lord.
Sure. And I appreciate you having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I think the best place to start is just as a child. I had a good upbringing. My family was great. Grew up in church. Yeah. That old joke of had a drug problem. I was drugged to church on every Sunday and Wednesday night. But never really had a relationship with God. Yeah. Said a prayer when I was in the second grade. More than likely that was fueled by fear.
I understand.
And got baptized, and at that point was a Christian, right? Yeah. But as life went on in middle school and high school and then into college, there really was no relationship there. Yeah. There was the kind of the canned routine prayer at night, but there was no dialogue, and there was really no living out of that purpose. And so throughout middle school, high school, college, no major issues, had a decent life. And ultimately, I was at actually a men's Christian conference here in South Carolina, and a little breakout session afterwards that night. And a gentleman raised his hand, and he asked the guy that was leading the session. He said, "Well, how do you really know? How do you really know that you've been saved?" And as I was kind of sitting in the back, I'm like, "How do you really know?" I'm like, "That's a great question." And the guy that was leading the session said, "Well, if I picked up a 2x4 and slapped you across the face with it, would you know that?"
I think I would.
I was like, man, and it really just hit me. I was like, man, I don't know that I've ever had that moment. I don't know that I've ever had that experience where I felt like I'd just been slapped upside the head and that life change. Yeah. And that really started a process that it wasn't instant. It wasn't instant that there was all of a sudden this relationship, but things started to develop and started to grow, and it started moving in that direction. And I think that was back in 2010. So over the last 8 years, I've gone through a lot of ups and downs, a failed marriage, failed business, and just life. Life happened. And it wasn't until really last year, I had a lot of things going on. I was succeeding in business. I was in a new marriage that was going very well, and a lot of different things happening. But at the time, I was still struggling with alcohol. And that was one of those things that was still kind of holding me back. And it's funny, I was riding up to Asheville, North Carolina. My wife is from there, and she had gone up there earlier that day. I had to finish work and then head up there, and we were going to be with her family and grilling out. And so I sent her a text message, and I said, I'm heading up there. You want me to stop by the store and grab some beer? And she had had a rough day. We had a very young child at the time who had been a handful. And I said, or maybe beer and tequila. And at that point was when I'm kind of riding up 26 through the mountains and lost service. So I didn't get an immediate text back. But it was this period of time in my life where I was just kind of trying to figure out what my purpose was. I was succeeding, I was doing well, I was making good money, experiencing great things. But what was like, why am I here? What's my purpose? And began praying in the car and just crying and praying, just like, I need you to tell me, like, what am I supposed to be doing? Like, what's my purpose? Why am I on this earth? And finally I said, I need you to show me right now. Like right now, I need you to tell me. And right when I said that, what happened was I went kind of on the other side of the mountain, my service came back. My wife texted me back. And so as I'm saying, I need you to show me right now. What am I supposed to be doing right now? My phone vibrated in my lap the very second I said that. And I looked at my phone and it said, preach. And she meant it like, should I get beer and tequila? She was like, preach. Like, yeah, I need what all I get has been a bad day. But I looked at it and I went,
Wow.
come again?
Yeah.
The interesting thing that I found over the course of the next year and leading up to today is that it didn't say be a preacher.
Yeah.
It said preach.
Yeah.
And there's different platforms that you can preach from. And mine happened to be social media and doing a lot of things that we're doing there. And so that's really led me to where we are today and finally that relationship where every decision I make, everything I do is based on my dialogue with God and what I'm supposed to be doing here on earth.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I think what you were saying is important, that a lot of people would understand that we need a purpose. It's hard to just get up in the mornings and start getting out to do something unless I've got a driving purpose within me, and so you've come to realize that. Mm-hmm. You've got a lot of guys that you in this social media network and business and that sort of thing.
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about that. What do you do to help these guys understand where they are, and how do they arrive at a purpose like you did?
Absolutely. So it's been a transition.
Yeah.
It's been a process because at first it was very monetary driven.
Yeah.
It was about how to be successful. It was just teaching people what it looks like to be successful. And I was really burning the candles at both ends. I mean, working 16, 17, 18, 20 hours a day sometimes, and 238 nights on the road last year. 238 nights in a hotel last year, and with a new child and a wife. And I realized something very interesting. I kept saying that all this stuff that I was doing was for my legacy. Like this was legacy. All this documenting my life on social media, and I've got podcasts and the daily vlog. It was all legacy.
Right.
And I came to this realization recently, talking with a guy that I actually hired as a coach. And we went through this process. He just kept asking me why, but why? Well, it's legacy. Like my daughter will be able to see these videos one day when she's older. She'll be able to see all this stuff that I'm doing.
Oh, yeah.
He said, but really why? But really why? And after about 11 hours of asking me why, he's like, I'm going to go 20 minutes, just kind of write down what you're thinking. He came back, he said, so what'd you write? And I wrote at the top of the page, what kind of legacy am I really leaving if my daughter has to watch these videos to hear the words that should be coming out of my mouth to her in person? And from there forward, everything changed. And I used to almost make fun of this idea of work-life balance, that only people that talked about it were using it as an excuse to work less. But now I've really embraced this idea of just going all in all areas, and one of those areas being your faith.
Yeah, your faith.
And so now that's what I want to talk to everybody about, is how do we just thrive in all areas? A lot of people want to talk to you about how to be successful or how to get in good shape.
Yeah.
I want to talk to people about how do we become successful, be in good shape, have the best relationship with your spouse, have the best relationship with your kids, have the best relationship with God. Are you meditating daily? Are you praying daily? Are you doing all those things? And just excelling in life. And it's just a completely different perspective that's now coming from me than they heard the first year. Oh. And it's been the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done, and the conversations that I've been able to have with people and the impact that I'm seeing. It's incredible. And it's really that moment where I was like, that's what it meant when it said preach.
That's exactly what
That's what it meant. And for me, it's not, I'm not in your face, do you know what's going to happen when you die?
Yeah.
It's just, there's something different about that guy. I don't know what it is yet, but there's something different. And I think it's doing things like this, the conversation that we're having, that that these things will slowly come out and we'll be able to affect thousands of people. And that's my intent.
Oh, I agree, and there's no doubt, because I watch a lot of your stuff on social media, and so I'm moved by it, and I learn. I'm 71, but I'm learning, and I've always said to the Lord I wanted to remain teachable, no matter where I'm at, because I surely don't know it all, and but I want to do better. Even at marriage, even at 71, I'll do better at marriage, and I've got grandkids, and I want to do better every phase of one's life, and somewhat of a legacy that is. I mean, yes, I'm like you. I've been all over the place and spoke to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, but when it really boiled down, what are you really involved in that leaves the real, true legacy?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so I think we're on the same thing. I'm just, except when it said preach, mine was to go preach. But
yours was literal.
I understand yours, and I wish we had more folk that would do what you're talking about, because to me that's lifestyle. Lifestyle preaching, lifestyle living, lifestyle evangelism, lifestyle loving, caring, mending, this sort of thing. Hey, we're going to be right back. We're going to go to some music, but I love the way this guy brings it out and the way that he says it to you. So I want you to hang on. We got a lot more coming. Eternal vision, Jesus is alive.
We're going to look at Christ's body in the tomb. The demons in hell rejoiced because they thought they'd won. But 3 days later, that party was over, folks. Jesus isn't dead in a tomb. Jesus is alive.
Drug him through the streets of town. He was beaten and bruised. The crowd cried, "Crucify him." He was abandoned and abused. That cruel cross upon his back, the soldiers at his side. With all that he had suffered, he already should have died. As we gathered at Golgotha, where those 3 crosses stood, we stared in disbelief at the horror and the blood. It was not supposed to end this way. Our hopes had been so high. He couldn't save us now, for he was about we watched and wondered how much more could he take. And then he cried out, "It is finished." And the ground began to shake, and the sky turned dark as midnight, for the end had finally come. And then they placed our Lord in a borrowed tomb, and we all thought it was done. On that 3rd day, something happened, something no one could explain. You see, the stones rolled back and his body's gone. Only grave clothes remain. Blessed be the living here among the dead. He has risen like he said he would. Then the angels said, Jesus is alive. Hallelujah to the Lamb. He's alive. He is the great I am. For the grave has been defeated, and hell has been denied. Death has been cheated. God's grace has been supplied. For Jesus is alive. He has loosed the chains of sin and conquered death forevermore, proving he's the King of Kings, he's the Lord of Lords. Jesus is alive. Hallelujah to the Lamb. He's alive. He is the great I am. For the great our Lord defeated. Hell has been denied. Death has been cheated. Your grace has been supplied. For Jesus is alive. Hallelujah to the Lamb. He's alive. Lord, you are the great I am. For the great our Lord defeated. Hell has been denied. Death has been cheated. God's grace has been supplied. For Jesus is alive. We love you, Lord. Jesus is alive. Jesus is alive. Alive. Jesus is alive. He's alive.
Amen. Good night alive, son. I'm telling you right now, if that don't spark you going, something's wrong. You done got wet somewhere. Good night alive. Woo! Well, thank you so much. And again, we have Tyler Harris as our guest. And if you've been listening, look, you may have some, kids and grandkids that maybe even on you, somewhere in your family line need to really listen to what this man's saying. He's been on the low end. He's been on the high end. But once he got to the high end, he was interested in helping the low end to reach back and who can we help. Let's talk about that. How do you see yourself now? You're talking about preach. Well, I love the social media that you're doing. I try to watch it. And I'm going to encourage people to go and check out any of his social media stuff to get kind of an idea of how he encourages people. Share a little bit of that with us.
Well, I think, back to what we were saying before the break, some people need that in your face.
Yeah.
And some people respond to the in your face. Some people it takes time. Some people it takes a gradual
That's
approach. Social media, there's never been anything like it. The ability to reach people across the entire world.
Yeah, it's amazing.
We did a live Q&A the other day. Just sitting in my office in Greenville, South Carolina, I had a guy call in from Nigeria. Had another guy call in from Lebanon. These people are following the content, and again, that preach, the message that's going out on Facebook or Instagram or on YouTube, it's reaching so many people. And so the analogy I use is the lighthouse, is being a lighthouse.
Yeah.
And specifically, if you look at the dynamic between being a lighthouse versus a tugboat. The tugboat goes out and one ship at a time, it brings it to harbor. But if you know anything about ships, which I don't, but I do know the analogy that the engines in tugboats wear out fast.
Yeah.
And they don't last very long. It's not sustainable long term. The interesting thing about a lighthouse is lighthouses last for hundreds of years. I mean, people go to visit lighthouses when they go to certain areas. But what does that lighthouse do? It just stands tall. Yeah. It's an example, and it just shines its light. It's not necessarily concerned about if the individual person chooses to be guided by that light.
Yeah.
It just sees its job as putting the light out there, and in this regard, letting God do the rest.
Yeah.
And by doing that, it's sustainable long term. I would view you as some type of combination of the two, some type of supercharged tugboat that somehow is able to sustain. It's incredible. That's just not my personality. I think it has to do with personality.
It does.
And again, I think it's just living and leading by example.
Yeah.
And that's really what I wanted to do, and why I wanted to start documenting things, so that they could see more of the real life of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. I'm not perfect by any means, and I show the good, bad, and ugly. But if the intent is right, then I think that's what's important.
Yeah, you're a lighthouse, no question. And it's a lighthouse to, like, maybe you have an example of
Sure.
someone who is maybe struggling, that's in your organization,
Yeah.
that are struggling, and yet how you have, shown the light to them. And
What I know is that we're all struggling.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
you got that right.
That's the thing I've come to realize, is that everyone's struggling somewhere in some area of their life, and that's why I like this approach of looking at all four areas: your body, your relationships, your mind, and your business. And I encompass faith in the mind, and so that's what we try to teach people, is how to win in all four of those areas. But more importantly, what I try to do is keep people accountable, because everyone needs accountability.
That's a great word.
It's one thing that I can look back at all the bad parts of my life, the rough stages of my life, and it was when I didn't have accountability.
Yeah.
And so with our organization, we now have all of our agents, which are across the country. I lead them with this accountability in all four of those areas, where we sit down and we have 3 goals in each of those 4 areas. 3 goals over the next 90 days. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to do on a daily basis in all 4 of those areas? And then monthly, we get on a call. It's actually a video conference so that we can see each other face to face. And I just hold them accountable.
Yeah.
And it can be something as specific as, okay, so with relationships, it says here that we're going to do a mandatory date night with your wife every Saturday night. So tell me about your date Saturday with your wife. And they're like, well, this past Saturday, well, it says here, non-negotiable date night every Saturday. What happened? And then I'm trying to figure out, well, what happened? Well, we couldn't get a babysitter. Okay, great. Well, let's get online right now, and let's go to care.com or some other site and find a new babysitter that you can have in your arsenal, so that this doesn't happen next week. And let's sit down right now and go and plan that date for next Saturday.
Man.
And then we look at, okay, you said you're going to pray and read your Bible. It's going to be the first 20 minutes of your day. How's that been going? Well, the first week it was good, and then, things happen. Okay, so those days that it doesn't happen, why? Did you get rushed and busy? Why did it not happen? Yeah, I woke up and I had to decide whether I'm going to shower or whether I'm going to spend that 20 minutes. Like, that's fair. Like, that happens. But why didn't you do it in the afternoon? Or what about later that night? It's not just because of your routine says do it in the morning that you didn't do it, that you just, sorry, God, we're not going to talk today. So it's really just holding people accountable so that they have that structure in place, and that they can reevaluate it every 90 days. And decide, okay, I've got that area down. I don't need you to keep me accountable for that 20 minutes now. Let's go a little deeper. Now I want to, now I have this new devotional that I want to do, or I have a men's group that I want to start, things like that. And it's just, accountability is key.
Boy, that's remarkable. Because when you really think about it, in Christendom, in church, or anything, business, I don't care where you are, accountability is paramount in these things. That if we're ever to be producers in anything, that would be top of the list.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then if we don't, I think what you're saying here, let's get an answer, because a lot of times I find softness in a lot of people. That when we don't do it, well, we just cast it aside.
That's
and it
all right.
becomes,
Sure.
But more like what we do is we try to get an answer to it, to how we can make this thing happen. Why? Because it'll produce good fruit in our lives, and that's what we need to do, be held accountable in these areas. Well, that's just absolutely phenomenal, and I know that you're a minister to guys now. So people can get with you on Facebook?
Absolutely. It's on Instagram. It's at Tyler Harris Page. Facebook, it's facebook.com/Tyler Harris Page. But I'd love to talk to people. I answer all my messages.
Yeah.
And people are hurting out there. People that are watching this right now, in one of those 4 areas, probably more than one of those 4 areas,
That's right.
they're hurting, and I'd love to be able to talk to them.
Now you have a question and answer time too.
We do live Q&As from time to time. There's a lot of content coming out on our social media. I've got a daily vlog that comes out every single day, podcasts, things like that. But more importantly, for them to know that if they are going through something and they type in a question there, that it's me. It's me responding. I take that extremely seriously. If someone's vulnerable enough to put themselves out there, there's some deep messages that come in, like some tough stuff. And I take time and really try to invest in that, because I know what that feels like on the other end, to feel like, you know, I'm going through this and I'm, for the first time maybe, gonna actually reach out to someone for help. Like, I don't take that lightly at all.
You got 2 minutes. Tell us a little bit about what you work, your job, that kind of a description, or what do you do?
Sure, I'm in life insurance,
Okay.
and it's funny because, you know, people talk about, well, you know, it'd be cool to get on social media and do all this stuff, but I just don't really feel like I do anything interesting. I'm like, really? Because I sell life insurance. There's nothing less interesting than that. But we have built a great organization. I have fantastic business partners that were the mentors that came into my life when I was in the toughest spot I've ever been in, and were the ones that really pulled me out and breathed life into me, and I owe everything to them. Joseph Caldwell, Nathan Wells, and Jeff Mag, and we're a family. And we treat everybody within our organization like family, and we care more about those other 3 areas than we do the production and the business side, because we know if they are winning in the other 3 areas, that the production side is a byproduct of that. That of course you'll do better in business if you're winning in all those other 3 areas, but just like a table, if you eliminate a leg and you put any pressure on it whatsoever, it falls.
Exactly. Well, I can tell you this, and we're less than a minute now, but I want to tell you, I'm a witness firsthand to being in their office and arriving and walking in, and just it's just amazing. I don't know how Joseph Caldwell is. He wants you to. He's just one of the most loving guys ever been around in my life, and his people show the same thing. I think the greatest thing that you can do in business, you can do in church, you can do in lifestyle evangelism, you can do in any part of your life, in family, children, etc., is just love them. Now, I spell love Time, because you can't love unless you spend time. And so I always remember that. You understand what I'm saying? Spend time with your people. This expresses more love than you could ever be as a young man or as a child. Daddy loves me because he spends time with me. Thank y'all so much for tuning in tonight. God bless you. Have a Jesus-filled day.